If you've just bought a Japanese maple like this and you're wondering how on earth am I ever going to turn this into a tree like this, then this might be the right video for you, because they are all Japanese maples. They are just at different stages of the journey. And today I'm going to be showing you what you should do at each of these stages, because what you do to a tree is completely different from what I would do. Now, the biggest beginner mistake is trying to make a nice little bonsai out of this immediately. That is not what happens at this stage. 10 of you are going to start this journey yourselves, because today I'm announcing the winners of my Japanese maple giveaway on behalf of my 75,000 subscribers. Now I'm already at 80. Are you going to be 80,001? But before we go there, let's start at the beginning. At this stage, you're focusing on developing a good root spread and a good trunk and trunk line. This is an optimal size to decide whether you want the trunk to have some movement and you could wire that out, or you could later on decide I'm going to cut it back and then get movement. And on top of that, as the tree is very young, it wants to root, so make sure that in the early stages you remove the taproot and develop nice horizontal roots. On top of that, I like to grow these out initially in a fairly small container. However, that being said, you do want to focus on vigor. So at this stage, root, trunk, health. That's it. Let's look at stage 2 of growing out a young Japanese maple. In fact, these stages, I think you can apply them to pretty much any bonsai that is deciduous and backbuds well. Now, letting this grow for 2-3 years will get you a plant pretty much like this. Can you see how the size of this trunk has developed? And in fact, if we look at a plant that is 5 years old from a cutting, you can really see the difference. This really is a young whip. This really is starting to grow a trunk. Now, I normally grow these in fairly flat containers fairly slowly because I want short internodes. But once I have the initial trunk line in place, like here, then I can really let her rip. And that is when you get these very, very long extensions. Of course, you fertilize well, you water well, and every year when you repot, you cut back all the roots so that you get a nice flat root base. But this starts to cause a problem now. Slowly, this is no longer looking like a bonsai. This is starting to become a tree. And this is where most beginners get nervous. Because after 2 or 3 years of growing this, I'm going to remove it again. And understanding why I remove this might be one of the most crucial things to understand in bonsai. So let me explain that for you. But before we do that, let's go to awarding some of these Japanese maples to 2 of my subscribers. Now, you may have guessed it, and in awarding these, I'm of course going to use the number that you were in responding. And of course, it's going to have to do with 7 and with 5. It's after all for 75,000 subscribers. Now, the first one is the first commenter, and that's Solento. Now, he was from Germany, and we go from Germany all the way to Portugal, and that is subscriber who commented as 5th on my channel. And he's from Portugal and Koya Kasaki, I think. Did I pronounce that right? I think I did. So that is number 2. 2 are gone. So we were discussing why is it so important to cut back those maples. Right. Now, cutting back a young maple is key to development of a bonsai. And why is that? Well, because a good bonsai has taper and movement in the trunk line. And what does it mean? It means that the trunk is not uniformly thick from bottom all the way to the top, but decreases in thickness. Now, how do you do that? You do that by letting the tree grow out, get really, really thick on the base, and then you cut it back and you let a new side branch grow out. Then over time, the wound will close off and you get a gentle tapering trunk. You do this a couple of times over the lifespan. You can do this very frequently. You can let it grow long for the whole year and then cut back short. Then the next year do the same thing, and every time you allow the tree to get a little bit taller. That will give you a nice gentle taper with very few cuts. You can also go much more aggressive and say, no, I'm just going to let this grow 5 meters, 10 meters, 30 feet. Taking a big saw, cutting it down, and then letting a new trunk line grow out. that you might need to do 2 or 3 times to get all those wounds to heal, but that also works. The latter is a lot faster, but also gets you a lot coarser growth. And what I already mentioned at the beginning of the video, for developing nice maples, I like slow growth, short internodes, because it gives me a lot of options for branches. I'd say it's time for a giveaway. One of you has been cheating. Right, let me just get dressed here. You say number 3, number 3, number 3. That was from Sweden and it's kufen. Kufen? I say kufen. One more gone. And number 4. Well, that was of course the 15th person. Rebecca Hunter from Australia. You're not participating, Rebecca. I'm very sorry, but I cannot ship these to Australia. I love Australia though, but sorry, next time. Well, then we go to Germany, and in Germany we have got avoid pi over rad 2. It is some mathematical formula. Anyway, one of these is for you. The red card can go. The white card can go in. Now, as your tree starts to mature and you see that the trunk starts swelling up, we start to move away from having these very long whips and actually pruning more frequently. Pruning more or less to shape, removing the long whips as they start to occur. Why do we do that? Well, because we don't want to develop the trunk anymore. In fact, we're moving into the area of starting to build the structure and the branches on the tree. This is this next phase of developing bonsai. You go from developing the trunk and the nebari into the primaries, the secondaries, and even tertiary branching. At this point in time, we're taking a much more targeted approach at pruning and letting grow. Instead of letting all the branches grow and wild and get the trunk really nice and thick, individual branches that really aid in developing certain parts of your canopy are left in place, but the rest is kept trimmed back. This is considered a primary branch. And why is the primary branch? Well, the branch was connected directly to the trunk. Now, if we let this grow for a little bit, this will get side branches, and those we call secondary branches. Now, the primary branch sits on the tree. Side branches are the secondary branches. Now, what do you think we'll call the side branches that occur here on the secondary branches? Exactly, tertiary branches. Every branch that you see on a tree is a primary branch and has secondary and tertiary branches. That is what we strive for. Now, this is way too long for a simple tree. So also here what we do is the same thing as with developing the trunks earlier. You allow it to grow out, and at a certain point you say, well, this is getting too long. Then I don't want this too long. I'm going to shorten this. This can stay a little bit longer. This one can stay a little bit longer. And now I'm building a foliage bed. So this is how you go about developing Japanese maple branches. Over time you'll get back budding, more refinement. So when we start pruning back our long branches on these younger maples with a reasonably well developed trunk, that is what we aim for. We aim for primary branches with secondary branches on them, and then eventually into tertiary branches. So this is still not the final stage development for a bonsai. Now, there are a few things that I should warn you about. It is about long internodes and why they're a problem, but also pruning mistakes. Yeah. If you look at this tree, and no, it's not a maple, that's an elm. You see here inverse taper. Basically, poor pruning. There's a pruning scar here, pruning scar there, and a pruning scar there has led this part to swell up. And that's really difficult to correct. So try to not prune multiple times at the same place. Try to not have multiple branches in one location. Actually, don't have multiple branches in the same location. Try to avoid having branches opposite of each other, because all these things make that a branch can swell up. Next to that, once you're pruning, you want to go and prune and keep as much as possible short internodes. As a branch starts to extend, the distance between the leaves gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And this is an elm. I know, we were talking about maples. The distance between the leaves gets longer. And what happens when the distance between leaves is long? Exactly. If I prune just below these leaves, this section will not get any buds. The first buds to appear will be here at the point where there's leaves. That is where buds are located. It will not form any buds here, so whether you prune there or in fact you prune here, doesn't make a big difference. Commenter number 35. He's from the Netherlands. Simon, gefeliciteerd. Ik heb een bakje voor je staan. Staying close to home, and it is Germany. That was David with comment 47. Eased up in the Netherlands. Eased up in the Netherlands. There's one for you marked. And then, after 15 or maybe 20 years, the hard work starts to pay off. This tree no longer is in need of massive growth. The trunk line is set. The branches are set. They have taper and nice refinement. Secondary, tertiary branching, all is in place. Now we get to special pruning techniques. One of the pruning techniques that you have here is partial defoliation. So what I've done throughout the tree, earlier in spring, I've removed leaves and growing tips from the canopy. So most of the branches only have one leaf on them. That will allow a lot of sunlight to enter the tree. That will aid in keeping the inside of the tree nice and green, aids in back budding, so later on I can cut back. Also, I remove more from the top than from the bottom, so the lower branches are strengthened, and this is the way that you slowly refine a Japanese maple tree. I get a little bit warm from all the hard work. Don't know if you've noticed, I've been changing quite a bit throughout the video. Now, I think with that I can go to the final set of prize winners in this video. And who will be lucky number 8? That should be somewhere around, what, 62? 67, because we're doing 5s and 7s. So 67. That is XP201. And XP201 is from? I don't know. XP, you need to let me know in the comments down below. Where are you from? The last two. Comment 75. Marino Worldwide in Germany. This one's yours. And now to make it really, really exciting, the last but not least, let's jump ahead 100 spaces. Comment 175. This is the most commented video that I have, so I want to give one of the higher ones also an option. Ook 9210. And he is from France, or she is from France. Anyway, with that, all of them have been allocated, and I hope you like them. Mind you, mistakes will happen. And if it does, don't worry about it. Start over, learn from what you've done wrong in the first place, and then do it better second time. Learning is always a part, falling, getting up, returning to the learning trajectory. Right, now some important information for the people who have won. You drop me an email. You drop me an email. And in that email you state your username. You state that you want this, and then I'll write you an email back and I'll let you know what you need to pop down in the comments to confirm that it's you. And also in that same email, please share with me your shipping address. I am so thankful for all of you who participated. Sorry that you didn't win this time. I hope you agree with me. These are not actually 3 different trees. They are 3 trees in different phases of the same journey. Development of root, trunk and health. Setting up for taper and primary branches. Refining a nice mature tree. Developing a young whip into a mature bonsai in 20 seconds. Now, if you are one of the people who is also at the beginning of this journey, maybe you want to consider subscribing to this channel. Over the next couple of months, you're going to see it all on this channel. There's some very nice videos already on when to cut, but I also show the mistakes, I show the journey, and I show the long time spent that it takes to create a bonsai. Some of my videos cover 4 or 5 years of the process. Everybody can prune a tree and say, hey, this works really well, and then never show the end result. I try to be different. I try to show what I do, when I do it, how I do it, and what the outcome is. Now, if you already have a young plant and you're wondering, where should I cut? well then maybe you should watch this video, because there I explain exactly in this sort of material what to cut, when to cut, where to cut, why to cut.